Welcome back to another episode of the House Husband Diaries. As always, I am your host, Carter C., and today we are talking about tax-free tax havens, cash stashed overseas, which is all about corporate tax rates. So, just to keep with the theme, I know not everybody really enjoys the politics, the political conversations, and even if you do enjoy them, maybe you don't really agree with me or what have you, and that's fine. I mean, that's just part of life, and that's part of what I want to talk about. It's my channel, so that's why I'm kind of talking about this. This episode with the national debt, continuing on that theme, I know not everybody likes numbers, and I'm a numbers guy, but I think I'm so tired of hearing nothing come out of politicians, career politicians. If you don't like Trump, you say nothing comes out of his mouth. Nothing comes out of most people's mouths in Washington, D.C., and people that want to get to Washington, D.C. And so I thought I would kind of start going through maybe some of these issues and saying, hey, here's some viable options. They may not be the right options. They may not be options you agree with, but at least they're options, and it's a starting point for discussion, right? Because I'm not in Washington. I'm not trying to get to Washington. I'm not trying to put something out there that I think they'll pick up and make into a law. I just think here's some options that maybe could move us forward, and I want to see what other people think. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just terrible ideas, right? Maybe they're amazing ideas, because I'm the house husband, and house husbands are known for having wonderful ideas. I think it was the first house husband ever that came up with penicillin, probably the combustion engine. Pretty sure a house husband came up with that. Pretty sure house husbands came up with fire, the wheel. Probably a lot of house husbands built the pyramids. Something you don't talk about. That's what I think. I think house husbands are the jam. So anyway, I kind of named this the top 15 corporations with the most cash stashed. Say that 3 times real fast. And really, I'm going to talk about some national debt stuff. I'm going to talk about personal income tax rates, because this is an area where I'm not as far right as some of you left-leaning folks think I am. You hear me say stuff and you automatically think that I'm, is so far right and what have you. But in my opinion, I have some right-leaning thoughts and I have some left-leaning thoughts and ideas. And this is one that probably tends to be lumped in more left-leaning or liberal. And I don't, as with all of the things that I say, I think that you have to have responsibility with ideas that on the surface could are maybe valid, but if they're taken to an extreme, they can be a very slippery slope. And I used to always hate when I would get into debates and arguments and stuff with friends and even people that I didn't really like that much, but they go, oh, that's a slippery slope. So, they'd take something I said and then take it to the nth extreme and say, well, that's what you're really talking about, because if you start down that road, it's going to end up here. And I think what's interesting is that argument doesn't take into account accountability. And the whole point of a democracy is to have accountability. And so we've taken that argument, oh, you're starting down a slippery slope, instead of saying, well, that might be okay, but what we really need to do is put in some parameters so that if we start down that road, we don't get off the rails and end up in a bad place. We go, oh, well, you say that, you must mean this, right? If you start down a left-leaning path, you must mean socialism or communism. If you start down a right-leaning path, you go, oh, you must be, white supremacist or something. And it's like, no. Like, I'm not. I'm trying to navigate where we are. I'm trying to keep us within the guardrails, the guidelines, right? And so before I bring up personal income tax rates, because I think that's going to come out of, or it'll be a topic that it comes out of this whole discussion of national debt. And it's because where does the government get our money to spend? They get it from income tax and from other things, but there's always talk about tax rates, personal tax rates, and I don't know anybody that doesn't want to pay less in taxes. Yeah. And any of those rich people that say the rich should be taxed more, as I said in another video, the rich at any time can write a check. They might even be able to Venmo the IRS, right? The Treasury. They can just, here you go. Don't donate it to a charity. Just give it to the government. If you think the government is so good at running budgets and so good at running programs, just cut them a check. Just give them $1 billion extra or $50 billion. Go ahead. I'm sure they would love it. I'm sure they could find a place to spend it. So it's silly when rich people say we should be taxed higher, because they can give their money to anybody they want, including the federal government, at any time. So they don't need to say they need to be taxed. They're only talking about your taxes and my taxes, not their taxes, because they'll get around it. That's how taxes are written, right? Loopholes for the rich, and everybody else has to pay whatever tax rate they have. So before we start talking about the tax rates, income tax rates, their impact on the government budget, I just wanted to explore this idea because not many people talk about it. And is it corporations, American companies, earn money and then stash it overseas so they don't have to pay the American corporate tax rate, which is 35%. When I was doing research for this, it was estimated between $1 and $2.5 trillion of cash is sitting in foreign bank accounts, untaxed by the federal government. $1 to $2.5 trillion that American companies are leaving overseas, not investing in America, in Americans. We can't raise the minimum wage. You can't pay American workers anymore. You can't do all of this stuff, but yet you've got trillions of dollars overseas collectively that hasn't been taxed, and yet you can't really pay people more, so you have to go overseas to pay lower wage workers to do the same job. It doesn't add up. You don't want to, but there's money in the system. And so you've got this massive amount of money. So I just said, well, let's just use the middle of the road for this video. So I'm going with $1.75 trillion of non-taxed cash sitting overseas. Now some has been repatriated. Trump did something. I'll get there. And so just bear with me for a second. So $1.75 trillion taxed at the corporate tax rate of 35% is $612.5 billion of tax revenue. $612 billion. We have a $4 trillion, $4.5 trillion budget. And I think Trump put one that was like 4.4. I don't remember. 612 billion. Right? So that's like what is that? 1/8 of the budget. Right there. Something like that. I think I'm doing my math right. 1/7 ish. Yeah. And it's the highest budget ever. We should be able to have a federal budget of less than 4 trillion. So then this would be even bigger, like a sixth of the federal budget just for 1 year. Now, obviously, you don't want to spend that money and just say, oh, well, we've got a windfall of cash coming and we're going to find ways to spend it. You want to save up and you want to make sure your programs are funded for years to come. Be responsible. But that's an aside. So you're talking about a tremendous amount of potential tax revenue coming into the government. And then you hear on the other hand, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you hear on the other hand, you hear all of these politicians talking about, where are we going to find the money for this? Where are we going to find the money? We don't have the money. We're already over budget, yada, 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 all of this stuff. Because it's just a narrative. They're career politicians. They don't want, you to dig too deeply into it. So that's part of what I'm doing on this channel, is saying, hey, like, there are ways around this. Like 100%, there are ways to fix our budget. There are ways to fix Social Security. There are ways to fix the healthcare problem. There's ways to fix all of that. Career politicians simply are not incentivized to sit down and figure that out, because sometimes it will involve tightening our belts. Sometimes it will involve telling the rich people that that have all the money that they're going to need to pay more and pay their share and their company's share. And then the politicians aren't going to get invited onto the private planes and the private yachts and all of this hobnobbing that they do. And, there's no incentive for a career politician to make the right choices for America, period, anymore. Just not. If you disagree with that, let me know. And give me some good reasons why you think they're incentivized to make good, solid decisions. So when I was looking at all of this, doing research for all of this cash that's stashed overseas, because let me just go ahead and back up. $612 billion. I don't know how much is stashed in the different countries, but in the video that I did previously about foreign ownership in our national debt, you had Ireland, Switzerland, and Luxembourg, and those were three that all had somewhere in the $250 to $300 billion range. Just repatriating that cash pays off like two of those countries, 2.5 of those countries. Or it could fund other things. You could put cash in it anywhere else. Healthcare, Medicare, yada, yada, yada. I mean, $612 billion could go a long way with helping us with national debt and our regular budget, so that we don't add to it. So then I said, okay, well, let's see who the big players are in the Stash the Cash sweepstakes. So the reason why I did a top 15, originally I was going to do top 10, but then there were some really big companies in the 11 to 15 range, and I wanted to include them because I want you to know that they're not like getting out of it. They're just one or two slots down below the top 10. So I'm going to go through the top 15 real quick. I'm not going to say all of the amounts of money that they have, but I will say that Apple leads the way by a long shot. $252 billion in cash overseas at the time, 2019. Microsoft, $132 billion. And then you've got, in order, Cisco Systems, Alphabet, parent company of Google, Oracle, Amgen, Gilead Sciences, GE, General Electric, Qualcomm, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Facebook, Procter & Gamble, Intel, and Amazon. And that's why I went to 15, because Amazon's in there. They're just 15th. They have a lot less cash. I think it was something in the 10 billion range. So it's a lot less than the Apples and the Microsofts, and even the Cisco Systems, Alphabet, and Oracle are all in the $60 to $70 billion range, give or take a few billion. So I just wanted to share that list with you, because it's really the biggest companies in the U.S., and they all do it. And it's just a tried and true method to lower their taxable income, to make their bottom line look better, so that their stock price can go higher. And then the CEOs and all of the higher ups at those companies they're getting stock options, tons of stock options. And so CEOs they aren't serving the clients nor are they serving the stock owners necessarily for the future. They're serving themselves because they're going to be the largest single stock owners of these publicly held companies, if they aren't already. Their retirement plans and their bonuses and stock options. And so they're only looking for what is the best decision I can make for the short term for the price of my stock options to go up, so that when I exercise my right to sell these stock options and I retire in my golden parachute, I can make the most money. And that's all they're doing. And it's a terrible game for the long run and the future of these companies, the future of America. And so not paying taxes is part of the game for them. It's not part of what's right and what's our responsibility. It's part of how can I make my stock price go up for my benefit and for my buddy's benefit. And then we'll do the same thing because they all sit on the same boards, and it's just a common practice. So just because it's common doesn't mean that it's right. Just get that out there. So what has happened since some of this came out? So I did a number of different research articles. I'm not going to quote them all. But Trump put together a plan to lower the 35% corporate tax rate. And he wanted the companies to bring back this money, and it would be a boon to the government to be able to increase their tax revenue. And then obviously it'd be a boon supposedly so that these companies could buy, or invest, use that money to invest in new jobs, new construction projects, new warehouses, plants, what have you. Well, the companies decided that they were going to, when polled, instead of using that money to pay higher wages, create new jobs, yada, 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 they were going to do debt pay down and stock buyback programs. Now, I'm not going to get into those too overly deeply in this video, but basically both of those are to increase the stock price, just make their stock look better. That's it. Debt to equity ratio looks better if you pay down the debt. Stock buyback, you have less shares of stock outstanding, same bottom line. So, each share of stock becomes more valuable. They're all, it's all part of the business game, the accounting game that's legal. It's not necessarily in the best interests of our country, America as a whole. They would say it's just business. I'm not, responsible for that. And that's where we would disagree. And that's where they would say, oh, you're just a liberal, fruitcake. And I would say, well, you're just a greedy bastard. And, is what it is. So what did Trump do? Trump said, okay, well, I'm going to lower that corporate tax rate from 35% to 15.5%. Because some is better than none. So that's what he did. So let's see, 15.5% on 1.75. If he could get all 1.75 trillion, this is the number I'm using, at 15.5% would be $271 billion. Not a small chunk of change. I could pay off any one of those, Ireland, Switzerland, Luxembourg, if you just wanted to pay their portion of the national debt that they hold off and just say, okay, get off the books, or fund Medicare or whatever. So that's not a small chunk of change. Yes, it's 20% lower than what it used to be, but that money is not coming over at 35%. So some is better than none. So what ended up happening is about, I want to say 600 billion or so got brought over in 2018. So he got a fair amount of the cash to be repatriated, and they got to tax it at the one time 15.5%. He lowered it one time, said if you bring it over, we'll make you pay 15.5%, not 35, but then it's going to go back up. So, less than half of what they were thinking that was going to be brought over. Well, I think Trump promised $1 trillion, and maybe he got about 60% of that brought in. So he kind of missed on that. I don't remember what the exact numbers were. That was less important to me than the fact that he did bring some over, but he still, companies still aren't just bringing it back, because these companies really, these CEOs and these companies really just don't care about the American worker is my point on this video. And all of this is that there's some lack of empathy for our fellow Americans, whether it's from career politicians or high up business people, these international companies. It's not really about, hey, what would be the best? How could we set this up? And I feel like the founding fathers, when they were trying to start the United States, it was, what's best for this colony? What's best for the 13 colonies? What's best for all of this? They were looking at a whole because they needed each other to survive. And at this point, we've been a country and the world power for so long that I think all of these people are insulated from it. And they're like, we're living in our own world and we don't need these people, or we can get that same thing cheaper overseas. And so they're just kind of selling, the core of America out. And they're just like, whatever, it doesn't affect me, and I'm going to, I'll be dead by the time that happens. So it's really kind of sad. That's why I'm doing some of these videos. Like, let's have these hard conversations that nobody wants to talk about, and let's see if we can come up with some good ideas, like repatriating the money and then saying it's illegal to stash cash overseas. If you're an American company, pay American taxes. That's what you do. If we need to lower the tax rate, but you got to bring the money home. Like, you just need to, because it's the right thing to do. It's American. Be America. If you don't, if you don't want to do that, then we don't need to have America, right? We don't need to have a country. If you're not going to look after your neighbors, who are you going to look after? And I use neighbor in a very broad sense there. All right, so we're gonna close this video, and I'll do a couple of numbers here. So just to kind of say that I was comparing how much money we would get in income tax if they raised income tax rates 5% versus just repatriating this money. Like, how much money are they getting from this corporate tax rate, and with the cash stashed overseas, versus just taxing the American people who get W-2s and they just can automatically, they're automatically having to be taxed. Like, you and I can't avoid paying taxes. If we work somewhere and we get a W-2 or we get a 1099, you have to report it to the government, and they're going to take their fee, and you're going to have to pay it, or they'll come get you. Corporations don't have to bring the money back into America and pay corporate tax. So there's your problem number one right there. Period. Like, they should have the same rules that everybody else does. So the top 50% of earners earn between 25 and 30K and up. So 50% of earners in America earn less than, somewhere in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. 46.5%, this is what it said, earn less than 30K. That's crazy. 46.5% of earners earn less than 30K. Almost half of America, of American workers. So you're talking numbers of rate of taxing, just such small numbers. These people don't make a whole lot of money. Why would you ever raise the tax rate on that group of people? It just doesn't make any sense when you've got cash just sitting overseas not doing anything, just making companies and stock prices look better. Where's the common humanity in that? You want to tax people that are working, that can't afford stuff. Yeah, I told you left-leaning people, don't think I'm a Trump homer. All these Trump homers and all these far-right people are cursing me out now, and tell you that right now. They're going to leave nasty messages that I'm not a true Republican. And you're right, I'm not either one. I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. I lean more conservatively, but I would like to think I lean more commonsensically. And when you look at money and you look at budgets, you go, we got to spend less, we got to get our budget in order, we got to get our national debt under control, and there's just cash sitting on the sidelines. Well, like, all you got to do is write a law in there. That's simple. Write a law in there, bring the cash back, tax the hell out of it, and be done with it. There'll be a market correction. All the rich people will lose 5% of their net worth. Who cares? They're still rich. And then everything will be back in order. I mean, it's going to be painful to get America back on track. But it'll take 10 or 15 years. But we won't feel it on a daily basis. The news will keep it in front of you, and some rich people won't really like it. They'll squibble and squabble in their private clubs and everything on their fancy yachts, but that's okay. Maybe they'll have one less cigar a day. Come on, that's a joke, right? You can buy more than one cigar a day with $42 billion. So all of this, getting off the rails here, all of this is just to say there are a number of options available to us to balance our budget and to pay off the national debt, or at least to pay it down, to fund Medicare, Social Security, all of it. We can do it. It's not hard. It's just the people that are going to lead us down that road are not career politicians, because there's no incentive for them to make good choices, the right choices for most Americans. And most people that are running for president or running for Congress aren't going to talk about these things. They're just going to tell you what they think you want to hear so that you'll give them their vote. And then they're going to go do their hobnobbing stuff up in D.C., and that's just how it is. Let me know what you think. I know that was a tough one. Let me know what you think on cash repatriation, on solving any of these problems in America. Let me know. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching or listening to this episode of the House Husband Diaries. Until tomorrow, I don't know. I have to come up with something, right? Until tomorrow. Write it in the comments. Have a good day.